You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's almost noontime. Okay. When you had your interview with the Santa Barbara sheriffs, you were asked by Detective Zealous if you knew if Michael Jackson was aware of what the team was doing. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir, I do.
And you told him you had no idea whether Michael knew anything about it, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation. No foundation.
Overruled. You may answer.
As you said, I have never talked to Michael Jackson.
But you told Detective Zealous you had no idea whether Michael Jackson knew what this team was doing, correct?
That's correct. Because I never spoke with Mr. Jackson.
Okay. You tried to speak to him, didn't you?
No, sir.
Didn't you tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs that on one occasion you asked Mr. Conitzer to get Michael Jackson on the phone to find out about the contract with Martin Bashir, right?
No, sir, that wasn't me that asked to get Michael Jackson on the phone. That was an attorney from the UK. That's the incident that I was relating to the police.
Didn't you tell the police? Correct me if I'm wrong. You asked Conitzer to get Michael Jackson on the phone to find out about the contract concerning the Bashir interview, and you told him that Conitzer would say, he's busy, referring to Jackson, correct?
No, sir, I don't remember saying that.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you the report?
You can show me the report. But the incident that you're talking about, I remember very vividly. And it didn't have anything to do with me telling Mr. Conitzer to get Mr. Jackson on the phone. It was an attorney from the UK who was very upset at the lack of responsiveness from Mr. Jackson about his not being on these conference calls that he felt were extremely important.
You actually said you tried to get him on the phone and the attorney in Britain tried to get him on the phone, and you both failed, correct?
No, sir, I don't remember saying I tried. I didn't have a phone number for Mr. Jackson. How would I try to get him on the phone?
Well, you asked Mr. Conitzer to put him on the phone, didn't you?
Objection. Argumentative.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you the report?
You can.
Objection. He's asked the witness if it would refresh her recollection, and she said it would not.
No, actually she did say that. But she said something else, too. Would it refresh your recollection to be shown that report?
You can show me the report, but I remember the incident very specifically. And I would never tell Mr. Conitzer to get Mr. Jackson on the phone.
May I approach, Your Honor?
No, she says that she remembers specifically.
In other words, if the report of the police officer, which I remind you was recorded, says you told them, I asked Mr. Conitzer to get Mr. Jackson on the phone, and he told me he was busy, that would be wrong?
Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained.
Did you tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs that you believed Conitzer, Schaffel and Weisner created an environment that allowed Jackson to pursue his other interests while they ran the day-to-day operation of his business matters?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you ever ask any member of the team at any time if you could get Mr. Jackson on the phone?
Not to my knowledge, sir, no.
You were asked by the Santa Barbara sheriffs if you had ever met Dr. Farshian, correct?
Yes, sir, that's right.
And you said you had not?
No, sir, I had not.
You also told him you had never met the Arvizo family, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, and you've described what Schaffel told you had happened with Janet Arvizo at the ranch, right?
Yes, sir.
But your knowledge of that only came from Schaffel, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And it goes without saying, Mr. Jackson was not involved in that conversation, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Schaffel also told you that Janet Arvizo was going to sell her story to a British tabloid, correct?
Objection. Hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you tell the police that Schaffel told you Janet was selling a story to a British tabloid?
Same objection.
Sustained.
As part of your work during those 6 days, you had to consider what to do if Ms. Arvizo sold a story to a British tabloid, right?
At that, are you asking me at that point, or are you asking me before that?
I'm not talking about any point. I'm asking you if you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that you were considering what to do if Janet Arvizo sold her story to a British tabloid.
I don't remember that.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you the report?
Absolutely, sure.
May I show her the report?
You may.
That's what I said.
Have you had a chance to look at your report?
Yes, sir.
Does it refresh your recollection about that issue?
Yes, it does.
Okay. In the course of your duties during those 6 days, did you take into consideration what to do if and when Janet Arvizo sold her story to a British tabloid?
I didn't know what story Miss Arvizo could sell to a British tabloid.
Did you ever, during those 6 days, as part of your work, discuss the possibility of Ms. Arvizo selling a story to a British tabloid with any member of the team?
No, because no one would go over the crisis plan with me. I couldn't discuss anything with anyone because they all had different agendas.
So you never discussed it with Schaffel, correct?
I never discussed what the team would do if Miss Arvizo sold a story to the British tabloids, no.
Did you ever tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Schaffel told you he was going to fax you a letter about that?
Yes, sir, I certainly did.
And did you tell them anything else about that issue?
That I never received a letter from Mr. Schaffel.
But you told them Schaffel told you he was going to fax you a letter about Janet Arvizo selling a story to the tabloids. Is that correct?
No, sir, that's not what I said.
Objection. Hearsay.
That's not what I said.
What did you say?
I have an objection pending.
Just a moment. The objection sustained.
Did you ever discuss with the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Schaffel had told you he was concerned that Janet Arvizo was going to make a deal with the British tabloids?
Same objection.
Overruled.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Now, the only knowledge you ever had about the Arvizos leaving the ranch was through Schaffel, right?
No, I discussed it later in the day with Mr. Konitzer.
Okay. But you first learned about it through Schaffel, didn't you?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And did you discuss it with Schaffel and Konitzer?
Not at the same time, sir.
At any time?
On separate occasions on the 13th, yes.
Okay. And at some point you learned the Arvizo family had returned to the ranch, right?
I was told that.
Was that by Schaffel?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified that Schaffel told you, the situation is contained, correct?
Had been contained, yes.
Okay. Is that after he told you the Arvizos had returned to the ranch?
No, sir, that was in the same conversation.
So he told you they're back at the ranch, the situation's contained, is that right?
I think he told me it the other way around, but, yes, that's pretty much the way I remember it.
And was that after Schaffel told you that he thought Janet Arvizo was selling a story to the British tabloids?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. You told the police the first thing you wanted to do was laugh, because it sounded like something out of a bad B-movie, correct?
Yes, I did, sir.
You told the police you remember these dates because you had a rental car you were driving, right?
That's correct.
And you had to renew the weekly rental agreement, right?
That's correct.
You told them the rental office opened at 7:30 a.m., and that was the time you received the call on your cellular phone from Schaffel, correct?
It was. I received the call on my phone from Schaffel as I was driving into the parking structure.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the next day is when you flew from Las Vegas to Hollywood to film the show Access Hollywood, right?
That's correct, sir.
And you told Detective Zealous you never asked Schaffel what the story was that Janet was supposedly going to sell to the British tabloids, right?
That's correct.
And after Schaffel told you, the situation is contained, you called David LeGrand, correct?
Later that day, yes.
Okay. And you were concerned about what Schaffel had told you, true?
Yes, that's correct.
You told David LeGrand you were concerned about Schaffel, Backerman, Konitzer and Weisner, correct?
I don't think I said Weisner, because I didn't think at the time that I even knew that Dieter was part of the group.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you the report?
Certainly.
May I approach, Your Honor?
May I see it, counsel?
Sure. That's what he's referring to. That's her interview.
Well, that's his impression.
We'll see.
yes.
Have you had a chance to look at that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the document that was shown the witness in this case had parentheses around the names that were provided by.
I didn't say those names. I said the word, they.
So when the police officer said, referring to those names, he just pulled that out of someplace?
I did not say those names. And I know I wouldn't have said Dieter's name, because I hadn't spoken to Dieter.
Okay, well, at this point you were concerned about what the team was doing, is that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Would the team refer to all of the people that you had previously identified as members of the team?
Except for Belliard and the attorneys on the UK side, yes.
So Garrigus, Konitzer, Schaffel?
Schaffel, Backerman.
Were you concerned about what LeGrand was doing?
No, I felt that David was under a lot of pressure, and, you know, I had no reason to suspect that at that time he would be doing anything wrong.
But at that point, LeGrand was telling you he was suspicious of the other members of the team, wasn't he?
No, not at that point.
At some point he did, didn't he?
At some point later, yes, he did.
Now, when you arrived in Los Angeles to go on Access Hollywood, did you talk to any member of the team on the phone after you arrived?
Yes, I did.
Who did you talk to?
David LeGrand.
Did you ever talk to Konitzer that day?
Not that day, I don't believe so, but I don't remember, sir.
Okay, who told you to appear on that show?
Well, initially the decision came from Mark Schaffel. And then I spoke. Access Hollywood sent the questions to me. I forwarded them to Mr. Garrigus. We went through them together and created the replies. And then I spent about an hour and a half or so on the phone on Thursday, the 13th, with Mr. Konitzer going over everything for it. So there were, and then, of course, Mr. LeGrand was aware. Actually, I believe I was in his office on the 11th when I talked to Access Hollywood to initially set something, to do something up with them, so.
But you've told the police that you thought Garrigus didn't want anybody to do public relations work for Michael Jackson, correct?
I don't remember saying that specifically. I mean, I don't remember saying that specifically, that Garrigus didn't want anybody to do public relations work for Michael Jackson.
Didn't you tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs in that interview that you had a theory as to why you were pulled off the Access Hollywood show, right?
Yes, I did.
You told them that you were told by Garrigus that you were pulled off the interview because he did not want anyone to do PR work for Michael Jackson, right?
When I was on the phone with Mr. Garrigus when I was on the set of Access Hollywood, that was one of the things that he told me at that time. He didn't say anyone ever, he just said for that day. He wanted me to stay around, to stick in town, he wanted to talk to me. He wanted me to come in the next day, sign a private investigator's agreement, and then he would fill me in on the rest, is exactly what he said to me.
Again, let me just rephrase the question. You told the police you were told by Garrigus that you were pulled off the interview because he did not want anyone to do PR work for Michael Jackson, right?
Well, as you said, that's a summary of my tapes.
Okay.
And I don't remember saying those words exactly.
Didn't you tell the police that this made no sense to you?
Yes, I did.
It made no sense that Garrigus would not want you on the show for that reason, is that correct?
It made no sense that no one on the team would try to do anything publicly to refute the absolutely horrible things that were coming out about Mr. Jackson.
Okay, and you told the police you thought Michael Jackson was being slammed by this team, correct?
Yes, I believe I did.
The word you used was slammed, right?
I believe so, yes.
You thought they were not doing their job to help Michael Jackson, right?
Well, they were there longer than my 6 days, so maybe I was wrong.
I'm not asking maybe, but, basically, your opinion at that point was that this team is not out to protect or help Michael Jackson.
That was absolutely my opinion, yes.
You told the police that Access Hollywood had a fax from Mr. Garrigus saying, "Don't interview Gabriel," right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Did you actually see the fax?
Yes, sir, I did.
You told the police that LeGrand and Garrigus clashed over several things, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you were getting your information about that from LeGrand, weren't you?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you told the police you thought Konitzer brought Garrigus in because Konitzer had power of attorney, right?
Objection. Hearsay. And
Overruled.
speculation. No foundation.
Overruled. You may answer.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yes. You told the police that you believe Konitzer brought in Garrigus because Konitzer had a power of attorney, right?
I believed that because Mr. Konitzer had the power of attorney that allowed him to make the decision to bring Garrigus into the team, yes.
Now, did you discuss that with Mr. LeGrand at any time?
Did I discuss Mr. Garrigus being brought in?
Yes.
And that Mr. Konitzer had brought him in?
Yes.
I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure that we did, but I don't remember in specifics. I just remember that David was not happy with Mr. Garrigus.
Okay. Did you ever see this power of attorney that Konitzer had?
No, sir, I never saw it.
Over Mr. Jackson? You never saw it?
No.
You learned everything about that from Mr. LeGrand, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And you were fired through an email by Konitzer, right?
Well, no. It was through an email by David. David sent me the email.
Well, you told the police that you were fired on February 15th by an email from Konitzer, didn't you?
David sent me the email. I'm sure that I said that David sent me the email.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection if I just show you the report?
You can show me the report, but the email didn't come from Ronald. The email came from David. And I can tell you what it said, if you would like me to.
No. That's okay. But you're saying you didn't tell the sheriffs Konitzer sent it. You told them David sent it, is that right?
I don't remember if I said specifically David sent it. But the email said that Ronald made the decision, so that may be why it reads that way.
Okay. You told the police you had sent an email to Konitzer, right?
That's correct.
And you told the police you sent an email to Konitzer saying, Schaffel, Backerman and Wisner have no plan of action and that Michael Jackson is going to get skewered on national TV, right?
Again, I would have never said Wisner, because I never heard Dieter's name during that time. And, yes, I probably did say that Michael was going to get skewered. And that was, one of my major concerns was that there was no plan of action to protect his interests from scurrilous accusations.
Okay. Was there ever any discussion between you and members of this team about getting rid of Backerman and Schaffel?
In the email that I sent to Ronald, I detailed reasons why I thought that he needed to get rid of Mr. Backerman and Mr. Schaffel, yes.
Did you actually tell him he ought to do that?
I put it in the email to Mr. Konitzer, yes, I did.
And why did you think Mr. Backerman should go?
Because he had done things that I felt were detrimental to the positive public relations effort we were trying to move forward.
Okay. To make a long story short, you thought you had a better plan to protect and represent Mr. Jackson than this team, right?
I believed that I had Mr. Jackson's public relations interests at heart much more than Mr. Backerman or Mr. Schaffel, yes, absolutely.
What about the other members of the team? Did you think you had more of an interest in doing a good job for Mr. Jackson than the other members, like Mr. Garrigus?
I didn't know what Mr. Garrigus's position was. So I can't speak to their intentions. I don't know. I can only speak to what I know.
Okay. You told the sheriffs that when you saw the Bashir interview, it disgusted you and made you ill, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you told them, the police, pardon me, I keep saying, police, the sheriffs that Konitzer and Wisner have a record of making very bad business deals, right?
Yes, that's correct.
You told the sheriffs that Konitzer and Wisner have scammed people out of millions of dollars, right?
Yes, that's correct.
You told the sheriffs that after you were fired by Konitzer, Mr. LeGrand hired you to do public relations work, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, was that for his law firm?
No, that was for him personally.
Him personally?
Uh-huh.
To your knowledge, was he a partner at a law firm then?
Yes, that's correct.
You told the sheriffs LeGrand ran a background check on Konitzer, right?
I didn't hear your question, I'm sorry.
You told the sheriffs that LeGrand was doing a background check on Konitzer, right?
Yes, he did.
Did you encourage him to do that?
Yes, I did.
Because you were suspicious of what Konitzer was up to, right?
I was suspicious of everything, yes.
On that team?
On that team, yes.
Did you tell that to Mr. LeGrand?
Yes, I did. Many, many times.
Okay. You told the sheriffs that it was your understanding that LeGrand and Konitzer had been casual friends for about 9 years, right?
That's what David told me, yes.
And you told the sheriffs you thought Konitzer hired LeGrand because he thought LeGrand would be quiet and just do his job, correct?
Yes, that's correct, that's what I said.
But at some point you learned that LeGrand started an investigation of Konitzer, right?
At some point I pushed David to go in that direction, yes.
And you pushed David to investigate a lot of other people, didn't you, besides Konitzer?
Who?
Malnick.
No. I didn't push David to investigate Al Malnick.
But you learned that he was investigating him, didn't you?
I don't remember David ever telling me that he was investigating Al Malnick.
How about Schaffel?
I don't remember David ever telling me he was investigating Mark Schaffel either.
Okay, so you don't know anything about that investigation, if it existed, right?
No, sir, I don't.
Never seen any documents that LeGrand showed you about those people being investigated?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. You told the sheriffs that LeGrand would not have investigated if you had not put these questions in his head, right?
I believe that to be true, yes, because he told me in the beginning that I was overreacting.
Okay. And you told the sheriffs that once LeGrand started doing his investigation and background checks on Konitzer, he spoke with accounting people and found out Konitzer had embezzled $980,000 from Mr. Jackson, right?
That was the total figure that he told me, yes.
You told the sheriffs that one thing of value that Michael Jackson has is a Sony catalog, correct?
That's correct.
How did you learn about the Sony catalog?
Through several sources.
Can I ask you who they are?
Well, first of all, public knowledge. And of course David told me.
And what is your understanding of what the Sony catalog is?
It's a collection of music, copyrights on music.
And what kinds of music are you talking about?
Popular music. But basically music from the Beatles and other artists.
You told the sheriffs your understanding was that Sony had an interest in that catalog, along with Mr. Jackson, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you told the sheriffs that you thought Konitzer was being paid to isolate Michael Jackson, create Michael Jackson's downfall so Sony can get the catalog back, didn't you?
No, that's not what I said.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you the report?
You can show me the report, but that's not what I said.
Did you ever say the following, Ms. Kite? Gabriel said it makes sense to her that Konitzer and Wisner were being paid to isolate Michael Jackson and let him do his own thing and let him create his downfall so that Sony can get the catalog back.
No, sir.
Never made that statement?
Not in that way, never, sir.
Okay. Did you ever tell the sheriffs you thought the recording industry was just as bad as Al Malnick?
I probably did, yes.
Okay. Now, you read this report before you came in to testify, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you ever point out to anyone that you thought some of the statements were not accurate?
Yes, sir, I did.
Who was that?
To Gordon.
When was this?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? You talked to him for a couple of hours 2 nights ago, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you talk to him about the report then?
No, I don't believe I did talk to him about the report then.
Okay. You told the sheriffs you're not saying that Sony is paying Konitzer and Wisner, but if you could prove it, you'd love to?
Yes, I said that as a facetious remark. Absolutely. I did say that.
You told the sheriffs you have a lot of sources inside of Sony, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you told the sheriffs that those sources inside of Sony have told you that they've been waiting for years to get the Sony catalog back from Michael Jackson, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you told the sheriffs that if you look at Konitzer and Wisner's track record, they're not the type of people that should be managing anything for Michael Jackson, right?
Yes, sir, that's what I believed, yes.
Told the sheriffs, if you look at their track record, they're not good business people, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You told the sheriffs that they caused Michael Jackson to lose his logo in the United Kingdom?
Yes, sir, that's correct, I did say that.
How did you know that?
I read that through news reports and I believe David confirmed that for me.
And you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs you thought Konitzer and Wisner were tight with Schaffel, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct, I did.
And you thought they all were hurting Michael Jackson, right?
Yes, sir, I do, absolutely.
And you still believe that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that you think somewhere down the line Konitzer and Wisner were going to get a payoff, right?
I don't remember, I don't remember using those exact words, and I don't know what context I would use it in.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you the report?
Sure you can.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to look at the report?
Yes, sir, I have.
Does it refresh your recollection about what you said?
Yes, it does.
And regardless of where you got your knowledge, I'm just asking if you said this to the sheriffs.
Yes, I believe I did say that, yes.
So you told them it made sense to you that down the line Konitzer and Wisner were going to get some kind of payoff?
Yes, sir, that's correct. But that payoff could have been from a business interest, it could have been from any number of things.
You told the Santa Barbara sheriffs you believed that Konitzer, Wisner and Schaffel concocted the business with Janet Arvizo, right?
Again, I wouldn't have used Dieter's name, because I had no knowledge of Dieter at the time. That I believe they concocted the business with her? Meaning?
That they were doing something with Arvizo.
Yes.
That was harmful to Michael Jackson, correct?
Yes.
And you were concerned that Schaffel and Konitzer had done something to Janet Arvizo as well, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So, basically what you were telling the sheriffs was, you think Michael Jackson's a victim and Janet Arvizo is a victim of these guys, right?
Objection. That's argumentative.
Sustained.
Now, again, you have no personal knowledge of what happened at the ranch with Miss Arvizo, right?
You're absolutely correct, sir, I have no personal knowledge of that.
And you have no personal knowledge of really anything Michael Jackson's done in his lifetime, because you've never been there to watch him, right?
That's absolutely correct, sir.
And how many times did you talk to Schaffel about what he said happened to Janet Arvizo at the ranch, do you know?
After the first phone call in the morning?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Maybe 2 times, 3 times total that day. Not many.
Uh-huh. Did he ever really describe to you what had happened at the ranch?
Other than telling me that they left the ranch, no.
And he told you they returned, right?
He told me that the situation had been contained.
And he also told you they returned.
That they had returned, yes.
Did he ever give you any details about that?
About how they returned?
Yes.
No, sir, he did not.
So Schaffel never gave you any details about how they left or how they returned, right?
No. He just said they left in the middle of the night.
Right.
Or sometime early in the morning.
Right.
And due to his level of agitation, I assumed they didn't go out in a chauffeur-driven limousine.
Do you know how they went out?
No, sir, I do not.
Did anyone ever tell you it was a chauffeur-driven car?
No, sir.
Ever discuss that with Prosecutor Auchincloss?
No, sir, I did not, ever.
Okay, but at one point you used the word kidnap, didn't you, to the sheriffs?
Yes, sir, I absolutely did.
But you didn't know she was kidnapped.
No, I didn't.
You knew none of the details at all, right?
No, that was my own personal feeling based on Mark Schaffel's level of agitation.
I guess it goes without saying, you didn't trust Mr. Schaffel very much either?
No, sir, I did not.
You didn't trust Mr. Konitzer either?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you trust Mr. Garrigus?
I didn't trust or distrust Mr. Garrigus.
Okay. The ones you were most suspicious about were Schaffel and Konitzer, right? Would that be accurate?
An accurate reflection would be to say that I was most suspicious about anyone who was taking their eye off of the devastation that was happening to Mr. Jackson at that time.
Okay. And I guess it goes without saying, you were concerned about Mr. Jackson's welfare as a public relations professional?
Absolutely, sir, yes.
You thought he was mistreated and misadvised, right?
Yes, sir. For the 6 days I was there.
You've told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Mr. Garrigus was being paid by Al Malnick, right?
I don't remember saying that specifically. You can show me the report, and I remember reading that in the report, but I don't remember saying that specifically to them.
Well, you told them that he was being paid by Malnick, but when they questioned you, you said it was just an assumption, didn't you?
I believe the context of that comment came from when Mr. Jackson was, from when the ranch was raided in November, and Mr. Jackson was taken from Las Vegas back to LA, or back here.
Well, in referring to this interview, the one I've been asking you all the questions about.
Right.
You told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that you assumed Mr. Garrigus was being paid by Al Malnick, correct?
The fee for Mr. Garrigus at the time to represent Mr. Jackson. Not during the public relations period that I worked there.
Okay.
But after, later in the month. Yes, that's what I said.
Okay.
Aha.
Let me just get it straight so I understand. You told the Santa Barbara sheriffs you thought Mr. Garrigus was being paid by Al Malnick, but you're referring to a period after the 6 days you had worked?
Yes, sir, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, you made some statements about what you think a proactive public relations effort is. But you knew that a rebuttal film was being prepared that was supposed to be a public relations response to the Bashir tape, correct?
That's correct.
And you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that somebody was getting $3 million for that rebuttal video, right?
That's correct.
Was it your understanding that Schaffel was getting that money?
No, it was my understanding that it was going into a corporation.
Okay. Do you know what corporation?
Fire Mountain, I believe.
Okay. So realistically, you knew that something was being done to respond to the Bashir video, right? Or, excuse me, the Bashir show?
Realistically, I knew that something was being done. Whether or not it was something that I agreed with or thought was the level that Mr. Jackson deserved is a totally different question.
Did Schaffel or Konitzer really include you in the production of that rebuttal video?
What do you mean by include?
Well, during the 6 days you worked with this team, did they ask you for any advice on how to do a rebuttal video?
Not on how to do the video. But Mr. Schaffel did call me to discuss with me who would appear on the video. And I told him that I felt very strongly that Mr. Jackson needed to appear on it to refute, himself, the claims that were being made against him.
Okay. And were you asked anything else about what your thoughts were on that rebuttal video?
I don't remember.
Is that the only suggestion you gave, that you can recall?
That I can recall sitting right here right now, yes.
Okay. Did you feel in some way that they were cutting you out of the development of that rebuttal video?
No, I didn't because there were so many other fires going on and so many other things that needed to be done. And the way that that video was being structured wasn't really anything that I felt that I could give input to anyway.
Did you think that video was being prepared with Mr. Jackson's interests in mind?
I believed that Mr. Konitzer and Mr. Schaffel were preparing it with Mr. Jackson's interests in mind, yes.
But you thought they could do a better job, is that it?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Did you think they had a profit motive in trying to put that video together?
Yes, sir, I did.
I'll object and move to strike just as to foundation and speculation.
Overruled.
You told the sheriffs that Schaffel was part of an agreement with Fox Television regarding a rebuttal video, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You told them that it was your understanding Schaffel had reaped some of those profits, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you told the sheriffs that, If you saw it, you could identify Schaffel's agreement, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Did you actually see the agreement at one time?
Yes, I believe I saw a draft copy of the agreement.
Now, you never met Schaffel personally, right?
No, sir.
How did you end up seeing Schaffel's agreement with Fox Television?
Because the initial agreement, David LeGrand called me and asked me to have a friend of mine in Chicago, who had done entertainment work, help him prepare it.
Okay, and who was that?
Don Hancock.
Okay, did you help Don Hancock put that agreement together?
No, he did it pretty much on his own, because I was busy with other things.
Okay, and it was your understanding the agreement was strictly between Schaffel and Fox, is that correct?
No, sir, that.
What was your understanding in that regard?
It was my understanding that the agreement was being done on behalf of Mr. Jackson, but that there were stipulations in the agreement that Mr. Schaffel could and would profit from.
Okay, at the time this was all being done, you thought Schaffel was trying to make a large sum of money on this, didn't you?
I didn't know how much money Mr. Schaffel was trying to make on it. I don't know.
Did Schaffel ever discuss that with you?
How much money he would make on it?
Yes.
Not that I remember, no.
Did you ever discuss that with Konitzer?
How much money Mr. Schaffel would make on something like this?
Yes.
Not that I remember, no, sir.
Was it your understanding that Mr. Konitzer was going to make money on this video?
No, sir. That wasn't my understanding of why the video was being made.
Alright, let me explore that for a second. You certainly believed people were trying to make money on this rebuttal video, right?
That's correct.
You thought Schaffel was one of them, right?
That's correct.
Did you think anyone else was making money on it?
Yes, sir, that's correct, I did.
Was that Konitzer?
No, it wasn't.
Who was it?
Mr. Jackson.
Okay, how did you know that?
Because David LeGrand told me.
Okay, did you think LeGrand was going to make any money on it?
I didn't ask him. I had no idea.
Okay. Did you look at the draft of the agreement?
I don't remember. I may have, but after I spoke with Don initially, I put him in touch with David, and they pretty much took care of it.
But you never discussed, obviously, with Mr. Jackson any role he had in this video at all, right?
No, sir, I did not.
And you never actually watched Mr. Jackson play any role in this, did you?
No, sir, I did not. No.
You told the sheriffs that there were 2 deals with Fox, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
One was for a $3 million deal and one was a $2 million deal?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
The first was a videotape that Schaffel or someone named Christian had videotaped, right?
They were involved in it, yes.
And the second had to do with Michael Jackson home videos, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct, sir.
Did you play any role in the development of these home videos?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen the rebuttal video that was telecast by Fox?
Yes, I believe I did.
When did you see it?
I don't remember. It may have been around the time that it was shown or it may have been later. I truly don't remember.
Did you ever see the home videos you referred to?
I believe I did, but I don't remember.
Were you asked advice on the development of the home videos?
David and I had discussed that before when we talked about a plan to rehabilitate Mr. Jackson's image, but that was before it actually came into being.
Okay. You told the sheriffs that Garrigus was paid money by Malnick, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you learned that from Mr. LeGrand, is that correct?
I don't remember who I learned that from. And I believe, again, you're talking about the time after I was there for the 6 days. And I don't remember if it came from Mr. LeGrand or not. I don't remember.
You told the sheriffs that you were told by LeGrand that the remaining money owed to Garrigus was paid by Al Malnick to, quote, keep this thing going, correct?
Yeah, that's probably true.
Okay. You told the sheriffs you did not know what the connection was, if any, between Malnick and Michael Jackson, right?
That's correct, yes.
Because you've never seen Mr. Malnick with Mr. Jackson, right?
Just in the newspaper like everyone else, that's correct.
And you never met Mr. Malnick personally, right?
No, sir, I never did.
You told the sheriffs you kept quizzing Mr. LeGrand about Malnick in the video and what this team is doing, right?
When I went to work for David Public Relations Wise? Is that your question?
Yes.
I mean, I'm asking you timeframe-wise.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
And he would often give you information, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you told them that Mr. LeGrand is scared of an attorney named John Branca, right?
That's what he told me, yes, sir.
And you told them that he was scared of Branca because he had fired Mr. Branca, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
He, being LeGrand.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you told the sheriffs that Mr. Branca had worked for Mr. Jackson off and on for approximately 20 years, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you told them Mr. Branca gets a percentage of music deals that Michael Jackson signs, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
How did you know that?
Mr. LeGrand told me that.
And you told them that Branca has an account that this money goes to, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And Mr. LeGrand told you he was scared of Branca because he knew a lot about what Branca was doing with Michael Jackson's money, correct?
I don't remember that I phrased it that way.
How did you phrase it, if you know?
I just remember saying that Mr. LeGrand was afraid of Mr. Branca.
Did Mr. LeGrand tell you he was suspicious of what Mr. Branca was doing with Mr. Jackson's money?
I don't remember him using the word suspicious. I don't remember specifically what he said about it.
Okay, but based upon your conversations with LeGrand, you formed the conclusion that LeGrand was suspicious of what Branca was doing with Mr. Jackson's affairs, true?
I can't answer that, because I can't speak to what was in David's mind. I don't know how I could form an opinion at that point.
But you told the sheriffs that LeGrand told you that he was physically afraid of Branca, right?
Yes, he did.
You told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Mr. LeGrand would refer to Al Malnick as Uncle Al, correct?
That's correct, he did.
Did he tell you he was afraid of Uncle Al?
No.
Okay. Didn't you tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Mr. LeGrand told you, Mr. Malnick has connections, and I don't want to see anyone end up dead in an alley?
He didn't say it in that context, sir. Not at all.
Okay. I'm not asking you in what context he said it, but didn't you tell the sheriffs that LeGrand told you that?
I did not make a statement like that, no.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you the report?
You can show me the report, and I know what you're referring to, and I did not make a statement like that.
You were misquoted, do you think?
I think so, yes. I know exactly what that statement was referring to.
Just correct me if I'm wrong. You didn't tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs that LeGrand told you words to the effect, I know Malnick has some connections and I don't want to see anyone end up dead in an alley.
You're taking it totally out of context. No. Mr. LeGrand never said anything to me or words to those effect. Using it the way you are in the statement, no.
Okay. You told the Santa Barbara sheriff's words to the effect that you thought Konitzer and Schaffel and others were conspiring against Michael Jackson, correct?
Objection. Foundation also requires hearsay to form that opinion.
The objection's overruled. You may answer.
I don't believe I said words to the effect that I believe they were conspiring against Mr. Jackson. What I did say was that I believed that their actions were not beneficial to Mr. Jackson.
But you certainly discussed with Mr. LeGrand's concern about what these individuals were doing to Mr. Jackson, correct?
It was my concern about the way that Mr. Jackson's public relations image was being handled, and I took that concern continuously to Mr. LeGrand.
But I'm not asking you about that. You and Mr. LeGrand repeatedly discussed his concerns and your concerns that these characters were taking advantage of Mr. Jackson, correct?
My concerns, which David told me several times that I was overreacting, until I continued to press him on it, and he began the investigation.
Okay, thank you. You told the sheriffs that Conitzer told you Michael Jackson hadn't seen Mr. Schaffel for months, right?
That's correct, yes.
You told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Conitzer said, Schaffel's a good guy, is that right?
That statement is in the report, but it wasn't Mr. Conitzer that said that about Mr. Schaffel.
He never said that to you?
Not to my recollection.
Okay. And you told the sheriffs you felt that Conitzer, Wisner and Schaffel manipulated Mr. Jackson to get whatever they wanted, right?
Objection. Calls for a conclusion. Speculation.
Overruled.
I don't believe I said they manipulated Mr. Jackson. I believe I said they manipulated the situation.
But the situation had everything to do with Mr. Jackson's welfare, right?
Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained.
You told them Mr. LeGrand would continually talk to you about what was occurring with Michael Jackson and seek your advice.
That's correct.
And did he do that?
Yes, he did.
You complained about Al Malnick, correct?
I complained about, well, I don't know if complained is the right word. But I told Mr. LeGrand that I was afraid that a high-profile public association with Mr. Malnick, compounded with everything else that Mr. Jackson had going on, would be very detrimental to him. Yes, I did.
Did you discuss with Mr. LeGrand that Al Malnick had connections with Sony?
I don't remember ever discussing that with Mr. LeGrand.
Did you and Mr. LeGrand ever discuss Al Malnick's connection to the catalog?
I don't remember.
Now, you indicated to the sheriffs, and I believe you testified today that Mr. Garrigus wanted you to sign a private investigator's non-disclosure, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And was it your understanding that he wanted to call you a private investigator?
I had no understanding. I can just tell you what he said to me. That's all.
But, I mean, was your reaction to this, he's trying to make me look like a private investigator so everything is confidential. Is that the idea? Is that what you thought? Let me rephrase the question. It's an awkward question. I gather Mr. Garrigus told you he wanted you to sign this form, true?
That's correct.
And your understanding was it was a non-disclosure form, right?
I don't think non-disclosure would cover it. I think it was ratcheted up, you know, a step up from a non-disclosure.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. You told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Mr. Garrigus wanted to bring you in under a private investigator's non-disclosure. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I don't remember using the word non-disclosure, but, yes.
And when he talked to you about this, was it your belief that he wanted you to sign something that pledged you to confidentiality?
It sounded to me like it was pledging me to more than confidentiality.
Well, and it was going to be under the guise that you were somehow an investigator, right?
I don't know what it would be under the guise of.
Well, let me just ask you this. What did he tell you about that?
He said to me exactly what I said. He asked me to stay in town overnight. He wanted me to come into the office the next day. He wanted me to sign the private investigator's agreement, and then he would fill me in on everything that was going on.
Okay, and you didn't feel good about that, right?
No, sir, I did not.
Something seemed wrong with that?
Yes, sir, it did.
Because you're not a private investigator, right?
That's correct.
You didn't like the idea you'd sign something that said you were something you're not, right?
That was part of it.
Okay, you also didn't want to be gagged, as you used the word with the sheriffs, right?
That's correct.
You wanted to be free to discuss your work with anyone you wanted?
No, that's not true. I put together the situation that happened the day before with Mark Schaffel calling me about Janet Arvizo. 24 hours later, Mr. Garrigus is telling me that. After I had already spoken to Ronald and asked him about the situation, spoken to David, and David said he couldn't talk to me about it right now. Then Mr. Garrigus is asking me to stick around 24 more hours and come in and sign something and he would talk to me. I didn't know what it meant. But obviously I didn't go around talking to the press about it, because it didn't get out, so.
Actually, you had signed an agreement at some point to be a public relations person with the team, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I did.
That actually had a confidentiality clause, didn't it?
I don't believe it did, sir.
Didn't have any?
No.
So when you signed an agreement, you thought you were free to say whatever you wanted that you heard from that team?
I did not have a confidentiality agreement in that agreement. But that didn't mean I was seeking to actively breach a confidence.
Well, you talked in your direct examination about an agreement.
Yes, sir.
And you signed a consulting agreement, didn't you?
Yes, I believe so.
And you probably sign them in your work quite often, true?
Yes, I do. But I remember looking at this one at Mr. LeGrand's office and there wasn't anything in there about confidentiality, in that agreement.
Okay. Did you have further discussions with Mr. Garrigus?
After that day?
Yes.
No.
Now, you don't know how often Mr. Garrigus spoke to Mr. Jackson, do you?
No, sir, I don't.
So if Mr. Garrigus hardly ever saw Mr. Jackson or talked to him, you wouldn't know one way or the other, right?
No, sir, I wouldn't.
Mr. Garrigus told you, "I want to see if I can keep you on the team," didn't he?
Yes, he did, sir.
And when did that discussion happen?
I don't remember.
You told Mr. Jackson you were concerned about Konitzer, Wisner, and Schaffel, right?
Again, I wouldn't have said Dieter's name. But, yes, I believe I told him that.
As I think you know in this report.
I understand it says that. I know. I just want to make sure that you know.
Okay, but you told Mr. Garrigus you were concerned about what Konitzer and Schaffel were doing, right?
I believe so, yes.
And you arranged to meet with Mr. Garrigus on some future dates, right?
Yes, I did.
And they never happened, right?
No, they did not.
To your knowledge, why did they get cancelled?
Mr. Garrigus told me that he was in court.
Any other reasons?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Didn't you tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs that you quit pursuing a meeting with Mr. Garrigus because there were more things that LeGrand was telling you and you had more distrust for Mr. Garrigus?
That's correct. I thought you were asking me about on Mr. Garrigus's part why they didn't happen. Yes, that's correct.
And your understanding was that Mr. LeGrand didn't trust Mr. Garrigus, correct?
That's what he told me. Yes, that's correct.
And one of the reasons he told you he didn't trust Mr. Garrigus was he thought Mr. Garrigus was tight with Mr. Malnick, true?
I don't remember.
Well, he told you that he thought Mr. Garrigus was being paid by Al Malnick, correct?
But that was after. You're taking two instances and juxtaposing them.
Okay.
Mr. Mesereau, is your microphone on?
I haven't looked.
Oh, has he been talking? Laughter.
We'll fix it at the break.
We'll start again, Your Honor. Laughter.
Did you hear that? Screams of protest from the jury.
Doesn't work at all.
Do you want me to fix it now or wait till the break?
Actually, he's heard quite well, I think. Do people in the back hear him?
No.
You should signal if you can't hear.
We did. We have.
They have been, and I turned the air conditioner off.
You've been working on it. Okay. Discussion off the record. Why don't you call?
I did call. She did. I thought in the meantime they could use that one.
Why don't you say something so we can see if they can hear you in the back?
Hello. Hello.
Very good.
Thank you. Ms. Kite, you told the sheriffs that, from the outside looking in, your opinion was that Michael Jackson did not know the things that Konitzer and the team were doing around them, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Objection. Requires speculation. She's never met Michael Jackson. There's no way she could have knowledge of what Mr. Jackson knows.
Overruled.
Yes, sir, that's correct. I said that.
Now, did you say before that you had never issued any press releases while you worked for the team?
I wrote a press release, but I don't believe it ever went out on the wires.
Okay. Didn't you tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs that you personally wrote various press releases that went out and got the approval from Schaffel?
I don't believe. I wrote press releases and I sent them to Mark Schaffel for approval, but they did not go out.
None of them went out?
No. Not to my knowledge, no.
Did you tell the police that some went out?
I don't believe that I said that they went out or they didn't. I remember saying that I wrote the releases and I sent them to Mark Schaffel for approval.
Would it refresh your recollection if I just show you the report?
You can show me the report, but if that's what it says, I don't remember saying that they did or didn't. I distinctly remember writing the releases and sending them to Mr. Schaffel for approval, and Mr. Konitzer.
And you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs you don't think Michael Jackson even knew about these releases, correct?
That's correct, yes, I did.
Just a moment. To a sound technician. Why don't you just wait till the break? And then you'll be better able to. 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought we were taking a break. Excuse me, Your Honor.
No, I didn't want him to try and fix that while you were trying to ask questions. We have sound right now, so.
Do you know someone named Jermaine Jackson?
Yes, I do.
Who is Jermaine Jackson?
Jermaine is Michael's brother.
Do you know him personally?
Yes, I do.
How do you know him personally?
I met with him.
Approximately when was that?
I believe in April of 2003.
And did you arrange that meeting?
Mr. Jackson and Jermaine Jackson and I, spoke on the phone and arranged it together, yes.
Did you call him?
He called me initially.
Okay. Do you know how he got your number?
Yes, from Rita Cosby at Fox.
Did you meet with Jermaine?
Yes, I did.
Where did you meet with him?
At his home in Encino, California.
You told Jermaine Jackson that Al Malnick and other people pretended to be Michael's friends, but were not, true?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
I don't remember saying that to Mr. Jackson.
You met with Jermaine Jackson for approximately 6 or 7 hours, right?
For several hours, yes.
And you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs about that meeting, true?
Yes, that's correct. I did.
And you mentioned Al Malnick, correct?
Yes, I did.
You mentioned Konitzer, correct?
Yes, I did.
You mentioned Garrigus, correct?
I don't remember if I mentioned Garrigus. I don't remember.
You mentioned Schaffel, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely I did.
You told Jermaine Jackson, these people are not your brother Michael's friends, right?
I don't remember that those were my exact words.
Would it refresh your recollection if I just show you the report?
Sure you can.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
That's not what it says. It says I told you about him and other people that were not Michael Jackson's friends, but it doesn't quote me as saying that.
Wait. When he shows you to refresh your memory, just look at it, and then you can tell him whether or not it does refresh your memory.
Okay.
Have you had a chance to look at that police report?
Yes, I have.
And did you tell Jermaine about Al Malnick and other people that were Michael Jackson's friends but were really not?
I did not say it in those terms. I told Mr. Jermaine Jackson about people that were associated with Mr. Jackson, but I did not say, and it does not quote me in there as saying that these people were Mr. Jackson's friends but were really not. That's not what it quotes me as saying.
Well, I want to ask you if this is a correct quote. Gabriel said she told Jermaine Jackson about Al Malnick and other people that were Michael Jackson's friends but were really not. Did you say anything to that effect?
That is not a direct quote from me. That's not how it reads.
Did you say words to that effect?
I told Mr. Jermaine Jackson about people that were associated with Mr. Michael Jackson that I felt were detrimental to him. But I don't believe I ever said they were pretending to be his friend, but they're really not.
So these words are wrong that I just read you?
The exact word using them as a quote is wrong, yes.
Yes. Now, Mr. Jackson's mother was at the meeting, correct?
Mr. Jackson's mother was at the house.
Was she at the meeting?
No, she wasn't.
Did you ever speak to her that day?
Yes, I did.
And how long did you speak to her?
Just for a minute or two.
Did Mr. Jermaine Jackson introduce you to Michael's mother?
Yes, he did. And to his wife also.
Okay. Is it true the meeting went 6 or 7 hours?
I was there for about 6 hours, yes.
Okay. And you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs Jermaine was in a complete state of denial about the people around Michael Jackson, right?
That's what I felt, yes.
And you told Jermaine words to the effect, "These people are taking advantage of Michael Jackson," true?
I told Jermaine Jackson that I believed, especially Mark Schaffel and his continued association with Mr. Michael Jackson, was going to be very detrimental to him, yes. And Mr. Jackson told me that his brother didn't associate with those type of people.
Okay. You told Jermaine Jackson you thought Michael needed to be around his family and away from these people, right?
Yes, I did.
And you felt frustrated that you weren't getting through to Jermaine about your concerns, right?
I don't believe frustrated would. I felt sad.
You told the Santa Barbara sheriffs you thought that Michael Jackson's lawyers would just shut you up if you complained to them, correct?
I told them that I didn't believe it would do me any good to talk to Mr. Jackson's lawyers about what was going on, because they wouldn't want to hear anything I had to say. Yes, that's correct.
And when you say, Michael Jackson's lawyers, are you talking about Mr. Garrigus?
Yes.
Are you talking about Mr. LeGrand?
No. I mean, David always listened to what I had to say, so, no.
How long after this meeting with Jermaine Jackson did you learn that Mr. LeGrand had started a private investigation of whether or not these people were defrauding Michael Jackson?
The investigation was started before the meeting with Mr. Jackson.
Okay. And did you discuss that investigation with David LeGrand?
The investigation that he started?
Yes.
As it was ongoing?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did he tell you that he had suspicions that these people were stealing from Michael Jackson at some point?
He told me that he had called the accountants and got them to give him some information without Mr. Konitzer's knowledge, and that's how he figured out that there was an amount of money missing.
Okay. But at some point did he say to you words to the effect, "I'm hiring a top-flight investigative firm to investigate all of these people, because I think they're stealing from Michael Jackson"?
No.
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled.
No, he did not. We were on the phone. And he told me to call his managing partner and ask him to begin an investigation into these people.
Okay.
And I sent an email to the managing partner and said, David asked me to contact you and, begin an investigation.
Okay. Now, you considered going to the police to tell them what was being done to Mr. Jackson, didn't you?
No, sir, I did not.
Well, you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that you didn't go to the tabloids or the police to tell them your story, right?
That's correct, yes.
But you had considered it, right?
Oh, no. I had no information or hard knowledge to go to the police with. And I certainly would never go to the tabloids with a story.
When you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs you were concerned about what these people were doing to Michael Jackson, you also mentioned the names Frank and Vinny, correct?
Yes, I believe I mentioned the names.
And you told them you had heard Frank and Vinny were involved with these individuals who you thought were defrauding Michael Jackson, correct?
No, I said I had heard the names. But I don't remember specifically commenting on the capacity of their involvement with Mr. Jackson.
Okay. You told the police you had no further information on Frank and Vinny?
That's correct, I did.
You also told the sheriffs that Stuart Backerman was brought in by Konitzer and you thought he would do anything Konitzer wanted, right?
Yes, I did.
So clearly, you thought Mr. Backerman was harming Mr. Jackson, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you think he was dishonest?
I believed that anyone who would put out a press release on himself above serving the press interests of Mr. Jackson at a critical time was just not someone who would serve Mr. Jackson in the capacity that he deserved.
Okay. I guess it goes without saying. You thought that Mr. Backerman's public relations efforts were harming Mr. Jackson. Does that make sense?
I didn't believe they were helping Mr. Jackson.
Okay. You felt he was putting his personal interests ahead of his client Michael Jackson?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Did you ever tell that to Backerman directly?
No, sir. I did. Stuart and I had a conversation a few days earlier. He was extremely upset because someone had quoted, used my name in a newspaper and quoted me as being Mr. Jackson's spokesperson. And he called me to yell at me about that. And I told him that this was not the time to nitpick about stuff like that I never asked to be called Mr. Jackson's official spokesperson. And that when the fire was burning, it was time to roll up the sleeves and pitch in and not worry about such petty things.
When you met with Jermaine Jackson, Michael's brother, at the home, how long after you had been terminated did this happen?
Several weeks. Maybe 6 weeks. I don't remember. 4 weeks. Somewhere around there.
So it was pretty close to the time that you were terminated?
Yes,
But in this 6-day period that you were working with this team, you appear to have obtained an awful lot of information about the team, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Your information came a lot. Excuse me. Your information about this team came from many discussions with David LeGrand, true?
Yes.
And those discussions preceded your joining the team, right?
Not. David didn't really discuss information with me about the team per se before I joined the team. So I had no preconceived notions when I joined the team.
After you left the team, you continued your discussions with David LeGrand, true?
Yes, that's correct.
About the team, right?
In a manner of speaking, but not specifically.
After you left the team, were you and LeGrand still close friends?
Yes, we were.
Okay, and you're close friends today, correct?
No, we're not.
You're not close friends at all?
No, sir.
Are you antagonists?
No, I wouldn't, no.
How would you describe your relationship? Just not a friendly one now?
The last time that David called me was the day that the Santa Barbara police came to interview me. And he left me a message and I didn't call him back. I didn't return the call. And, because I didn't want to be put in a bad position.
Did the Santa Barbara sheriffs tell you not to speak to anybody about the interview?
Not to speak with anybody at all?
About your interview, yes.
No, I don't remember that they said that to me, no. No, sir.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. He tried to reach you on March 11, 2004, and you didn't return the call, right?
That's correct.
And you haven't talked to him since, right?
No, sir, that's correct.
Okay, do you still do any public relations work for his firm or him?
No, sir.
When did your public relations work for him stop?
Visibly, I would say probably sometime around the beginning of April. But throughout the summer and, even up to around the time of the raid of the ranch, he would send me emails and ask me to check things out for him, or I would send him articles.
Okay, you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Backerman was more concerned with his own public relations than taking care of Michael Jackson, right?
Yes, I did.
And you still believe that, right?
Yes, I do.
Now, did Backerman ask you to help him with his own press release about what a great guy he was?
Oh, God, no, he didn't.
Did you see that? Did you see that press release by surprise, or how did you learn about it?
I saw it in the newspaper, yeah.
Was this during the 6 days you worked for Michael?
Yes, sir, it was. I believe it was the 13th of February.
And was it announcing that Mr. Backerman will be doing PR for Michael Jackson?
Yes, sir, it was.
And you don't know if Backerman's ever met Michael Jackson, do you?
No, sir, I don't.
Certainly in any discussions you had with Mr. Backerman, Michael wasn't there, right?
That's correct. If he was, I think he would have been very upset.
Now, you told the police that Backerman was upset that there was an article about you in the New York Times saying that you represented Michael, right?
That's correct. It wasn't an article. It was a quote. I had received an overflow, what we called an overflow call from a reporter who was looking for a quote on a story that he was going to run. I did not identify myself to that reporter as his spokesperson but when the report was printed, that's how it quoted me. And Mr. Backerman was extremely annoyed about that.
Okay, what did he say to you?
He said, "How could you go around telling people that you're Mr. Jackson's spokesperson? I'm his official spokesperson, not you."
And what was your response?
I won't give you my verbatim response. But my response basically was, Stuart, it was a call that I took. I never told anyone that I am Mr. Jackson's official spokesperson. Our client is in severe trouble and this is not the time to be wasting an hour or so on the phone arguing about something so petty as this.
And did you tell the sheriffs where Backerman was staying at that point in time?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where did you tell the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Backerman was staying?
At Mr. Schaffel's house.
How did you learn that?
From Mr. Backerman and from David LeGrand.
You've indicated that you thought Schaffel. Excuse me, not you thought. You were told Schaffel's in charge of public relations at one point, right?
Yes, sir.
Backerman told you he's in charge of public relations at one point, didn't he?
No, Backerman never said he was in charge of public relations.
What did he say his role was?
He was Mr. Jackson's official spokesperson.
And he told you that he was Mr. Jackson's official spokesperson while living at Mr. Schaffel's place, is that correct?
Yes.
And, of course, you don't know if Backerman even cleared anything ever with Michael Jackson. You don't know?
I have no idea if Mr. Backerman ever spoke with Mr. Jackson, no.
Your suspicion was he was issuing press releases without Mr. Jackson even knowing about it, right?
Stuart never, to my knowledge, during the time I was there, issued a press release either. No releases except for Belliard's went out at that time.
Okay, and you told the sheriffs that you didn't think Konitzer even filled in Backerman about all the information he had?
That's correct. Yes, I did.
So you thought Backerman was being left in the dark about what Konitzer was doing, right?
I believed that there was an intense lack of communication among the team that could have worked to Mr. Jackson's benefit to help quench some of the fires.
So what you wanted was a better team, a team with more integrity, correct?
What I wanted was a team that would be extremely proactive on Mr. Jackson's benefit.
And you felt this team was putting their own interests ahead of Mr. Jackson's?
Yes, sir, I did.
Let's take our break.